Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Excuse me if I seem a little sunburnt. Just went out for a little surf. It's 4th of July weekend, so I'm gonna be out. Probably I'm gonna be going out tomorrow because the swell is gonna be pretty good supposedly, from what I read on the surf reports. So yeah, so I'm gonna have some fun. I'm probably gonna also try to watch Jurassic Park tonight as well, just so I can have that video up because I wanted to do that review before I go check out the new one. But uh, this video kind of was brought on by a article that I read about the production for Elio, which if you've been following that film as of late, or just doing a simple Google search, the film is not done well at all. It's a big failure for the company, big failure for Pixar, and apparently there was some information that came out with regards to the production of the film, specifically in the test screening process. Apparently, the initial version of Elio had the main character be gay, and that apparently did not that apparently didn't test well, or at least by just the general version of what that film was. I don't know if it was squarely to do with that aspect, but it was more just just by the general cut. The movie was not well received in the test screening room. And then they decided to go in a different direction, and they decided to make the character more masculine, as it now that you saw in the film. And obviously, that didn't pan out for them. But it made me wonder, just because that's a large part of the discussions that are being had today. Unfortunately, so with the film community, because there's room for other discussions. But it's funny too, because those are also the discussions that I am like the most interested in at the same time, so it's like, it's unfortunate, but it's also the ones that I'm like, I would be willing to talk more of than anything else. Cause I like to have more nuanced discussions than just, is the movie good or not? Just opinions are opinions, but, um, but yeah, it did make me wonder. It's like, um, is it really that, um, is it really that detrimental, like, that they had to like change things? And is it really that detrimental on a financial level for having these LGBTQ things in here? Because that's a large thing that's been happening lately with studios. They've been kind of like toying with things, Disney especially, trying to toy with LGBTQ type ideas and inserting them into their products and their projects. And um, I hear the discussions, or at least I've watched a few videos with like some people talking about, certain things, and I follow certain people that have specific beliefs, and it, maybe it's just because of where I am personally right now, just like mentally speaking, but I I just don't see what all the fuss is about. I mean, I can understand to some extent, right? Like, okay, like the part that people bring up the most, like the changing of characters that were initially into that of, LGBTQ, which really doesn't happen all that much. I mean, when you really think about it, it's like, these things are more or less discussed, but they never really pursue these ideas. Um, like, I'm trying to think of an example, um, but but it's even, not even finding an example, I think is pretty illustrative. Like, it's more to do with the comments that are made within these projects, like the interviews and stuff like that, that really gets people pissed off. One I can think of, and I will present 2 points within this example. One of which is the part of why you shouldn't care, and then the other part of maybe perhaps there's some weight to why someone would care. Um, you guys are maybe familiar with the show The Acolyte, which is a Star Wars show. Wasn't well received at all. A lot of people, from what I saw online, were not happy with it. And there was an interview that was done with the cast, and I guess at some point during this interview, someone decided, I think it was the main star, Amanda Steinberg, I forget her name, my apologies, but um, she said something in regards to the cast, saying that there's like a ton of gay people in the cast, you know, and, you know, like, I'm going to start on the point of why a comment like that, I get why people may feel they might feel a little weirded by a comment like that, because it doesn't really make sense in the discussion of what we're talking about here. We're talking about Star Wars, and as far as the show is concerned, at least as from what I've seen, those sort of ideas, those gay themes or LGBTQ type ideas, they're not very embedded into that story. So to bring up something like that, it just feels like a bit of a just feels, just kind of pointless. But at the same time, if it really does have no effect on the story, I just don't see why someone would get so like triggered by it, or get so, I guess, I don't know, like, oh my god, like, you see what they're doing with the franchise, and it's like, but they don't do those things. Like, I don't really see that stuff often. I mean, personally, I just don't. I mean, there, you can see nuances, you could see like suggestions here and there, but primarily speaking, they don't really make an effort to do so. And there might be hesitations for that because of just the market. How literally the internet is discussing these things. There probably is pushback from studios because of that. And why a company like Disney, for example, is they try, they definitely have tried, especially in the Pixar front. They've really have tried to embed LGBTQ ideas. There was apparently a kiss scene between two girls, but in the background of the Lightyear film from Pixar. My bad, I hit my mic. There was then the TV show, I think it was called Win or Lose. I could be wrong. There was going to be a whole episode that was going to be centered around LGBTQ ideas, and that got scrapped. And then here we are with Elio. So, is it a bad thing to do these things? No. I mean, no. There's nothing wrong with telling a story, if the story is built around that, and, like I said, or like many people have said, if it affects things that we've seen before, I get why some people might feel that way. Like, if for some reason, um, like, I don't know, it doesn't really bother me though, like, it just doesn't really bother me. It doesn't affect my ego. It doesn't really make me feel a certain way just because I see an LGBTQ thing, On one level, that's just Hollywood today. I mean, that's just the spirit of Hollywood today. That's how they run. That's what they're motivated by. It's the kind of people that are coming into this industry, so it's, it's not something that's like become an epidemic or something like that. That's just the kind of people that are being brought up in the industry, the kind of people that are being brought in, these people within my age and stuff like that, um, but there are times where I can understand why people would want to have a discussion like this when you're framing LGBTQ ideas in a certain light that just aren't necessarily true. Take a film like Bros, for example. If you guys remember Bros, um, I remember distinctly that they were trying to build this as like the first major studio, or the first movie being backed by like a major studio that had like LGBTQ themes, like something along those lines. And I'm like, have you seen Love, Simon? Have you seen Brokeback Mountain? Have you seen any of these films that have gone on to be widely considered, and just widely recognized? And also, I'm pretty sure that a major company was involved in one of those movies. So a narrative like that was just completely false. You know, And the film didn't do any business as far as I remember. And then I remember, I think the actor Billy Eichner, he denounced people for the movie for failing, and he was like basically saying that, oh, it's just misogynist. It's just these, these just toxic, people out there. Like when you frame it in that way, I can get why people online respond in a certain way, because you're creating a false narrative, you're throwing accusations, you're attacking people. When you're doing things like that, when you're basically trying to um, when you're trying to dominate over people, when you're not trying to be inclusive, as the whole mentality I would think within LGBTQ stuff is trying to be. It's like I I get why people would get upset by that. Um, and just be clear, like I am a supporter. I mean, of course. I mean, I think every person should be a supporter of LGBTQ. It's like, of course. I mean, people who come out, people who express themselves. Yeah. I have my personal beliefs, within that community and within other things, but this isn't the place for that. But I don't allow those things to dictate my experiences with films. For example, my favorite movie of 2023, I believe it was 2023, was Mutt. I really enjoyed the film, and I think that specific actor was great. And I want to see more of them. I saw them in a film because I saw Mutt at Sundance at the online screening, and they were in another film. I think the year after that, if it was In the Summers, I think that's what it was called, with Sasha Calle, the Supergirl actress, and they were also very good in that as well. So, I don't have a like a like a like a like an agenda, with that community in a passionate way. I have my opinions, but I don't allow them to affect my experience in watching the art for itself. I will give credit where credit is due. I've seen other films that have LGBTQ themes in them that I enjoy. Blue is the Warmest Color. Find is pretty good. It has its issues, but it's still a good piece. Um, Moonlight, which I always have said, Moonlight fundamentally is not that of an LGBTQ film. I mean, it's way more than that, and I feel like that people who frame it in that way, they're just kind of whittling it down. Um, like that's another discussion too. Sometimes when people watch movies, it is, squarely to do with like agendas. In the case of Moonlight, like I've always seen that movie as more of a exploration of trauma and abuse, and how that affects a person, as the years go on, and the role models, the people that they surround themselves by. It's a movie about communities. It's about, people being brought up within specific communities, within specific households, and how that affects a person and dictates their choices in life. It's not about a gay man. I mean, yes, the person that we follow happens to be gay, but that is not the main point of that story. But a lot of people want to bring up those aspects of that story, even though those aspects are actually pretty minor. Um, like those sort of discussions I also will agree with, because it's like, why bring these things up when it is not integral to the plot? Like, it's not integral in Moonlight for that character to be gay. It's not. Like, that character could have been straight, and nothing would have been affected in the story. It just so happens that the storyteller wanted to have that character be gay. And it kind of, again, is an illustration of of discovering one's identity. It's kind of basically kind of providing a specific view to that question. But again, it's minor. So, but fundamentally speaking, though, I don't take issues with this. Like, I really don't. I can see why people do. Like I said, I can understand to some extent why people feel that way, especially within how you frame these discussions. But I don't really just care. Like, I care more about seeing a good story. I care about, good writing. Of course, I do take issues with films that do feel the need to project onto the viewers. I don't really like that spirit as much as I do with a story kind of just moving, unfolding, and not really forcing you to kind of listen. Like I like a story that just kind of lays it out for you. I don't give a shit who's starring in it, and I don't give a shit who's directing it. Like, I just don't really care about the little things like that, because it really is just little things. And for a lot of people, they're just kind of stuck on those things. I notice. It's like we got other things to do, folks. I mean, especially in discussion of film, there's other things that you can discuss. We can talk about the finances. Um, we can talk about the quality. We can talk about the writing. We can talk about the acting. We can talk about possibilities of a future for this. If more stories to be told, or if this is it. There's so many other things that we can discuss. I just don't see what this discussion really does outside of just addressing things that are either very apparent or are not really there at all. Like, I just don't really see it. Like, I get it. I do. I understand why some people do think that way. And I can share in that spirit to some extent. But a large part of me just goes like, all right. Like, I look at those comments from the Acolyte, I'm just like, yeah, that's weird. But it's like, okay, whatever, moving on. Like, it doesn't bother me, you know? It really doesn't bother me. And I find it funny that it bothers a lot of other people, because it doesn't, I don't think it affects the quality of stuff. I think it more is to do with, like, because yes, there is things like DEI, we've talked about those things in the past, where they do hire on people based on certain things. Like, yes, I understand, but the stories are still what they are. They're not motivated by specific themes or specific studies. Like, it's not like that. It's not like companies are now storytelling wise, catering to that. They're just like the DEI stuff. As I've discussed before, I wasn't a fan of that. I think that those policies were not the greatest. And I'm glad that companies pulled back on them, but that's to do with the new administration. But it's like, I just don't really like. I mean, we can get in discussions about all that stuff, and I have in the past. I can actually link a video at the end of this where I talked about Disney and or companies, with DEI related policies and my view on that. But I just don't really see the reason for me to get all like riled up and pissed off, and that it's like, like, does it really matter? I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of other things we can really spend our time doing, and we can maybe try to not just make life too narrow. We only got so much time on our hands. It's like, does it really matter? I don't know. So that's what I think. I think these types of stories are welcome. Like, I don't mind. I really don't. I'm just more looking at a film for what it is. And if I seek it out, I'll seek it out. If I don't, then I don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't seek out a lot of LGBTQ stuff because, well, it doesn't really pertain to me personally. Like, I don't have those sort of connections. But I'm not against watching a film like that either. Like I said, What's Me was one of my favorite movies. I think, if not my favorite movie of 2023. Like, it was just awesome, or at least it was one of my favorite movies that year. So I'm not opposed to watching it. It just has to hit the right note, But you guys, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on this. It's kind of an interesting discussion. It's a discussion that's been being had online, I noticed, but let me know. Do you guys like these kind of movies? Do you guys not? And if you don't, let me know, and let's be civil in the comments, because I get a conversation like this definitely gets a little heated, especially when we bring up stuff like DEI and stuff like that. Just be nice in the comments, guys, because all it is just movies at the end of the day. But let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.